Everywhere we go, I and I will go there. And everything he said, oh yes, it's hard. So I can die and I follow him. Come on, let us follow him. Follow, Marcus, yeah, I can die and I follow him. He never commit no crime. He always do right. So I can die and follow Marcus, yeah, I can die and follow. Come on. Follow, Marcus, yeah, we could stay. Follow. He never disobey his grandmother. No. He always obey his grandfather. So I can't die and follow him. Yes, we should follow him. Come on, follow, Marcus, yeah, I can't die and follow. We should follow. I'm ready. Do you ready? I'm waiting.
Yes, greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unity and Solidarity TV. Thank you so much for joining us for another big and serious discussion. Today, of course, is Sunday, September 22nd, 2024, and I have the honor to be your host. My name is Bakari Makeru, streaming live from the beautiful, beautiful island of Swaliga, otherwise known as St. Martin in the Caribbean. Of course, persons can also check out this episode via our my Facebook page, of course, which is Bakari Makeru. And of course, we have a Facebook page for the UNIA ACL St. Martin on Facebook. So you can also check us out there, and of course, like and subscribe to our Facebook channel, our Facebook page, and of course our YouTube channel, which is Unity and Solidarity TV. Before we get into today's discussion, because we are going to have a very animated discussion today with my brother hailing from the beautiful country of Uganda, and we are going to talk about the recently concluded China Africa Summit that was recently held the beginning of this month. So there was a number of interesting things that took place, and we are going to have a lively discussion about that. But before we do, of course, I have to remind each and every one of you that if you are in need of a life coach, mindfulness coach, yoga instructor, or orthopedagogue specializing in behavior modification, then do yourself, do your family, do your network a huge favor by checking out Mindful Elevation Caribbean, which offers invaluable support for youth, adolescents, and families through counseling and workshops in different areas from building self-confidence, meditation, relationship guidance, emotional self-regulation, and the list goes on and on. So feel free to reach out to Dr. Ramon Lahanza on the following platforms. You can reach out to her via the Facebook page of Mindful Elevation Caribbean. There's also a YouTube channel with lots and lots of great conversations with different persons from different walks of life, touching on different aspects of the human experience, from stress management to grief, and the list goes on and on. You can also find her on Mindful Elevation Caribbean, that's on the YouTube channel. And then, of course, there is a presence on Instagram, which is mindful.elevation, excuse me, mindful.elevation.caribbean, and that's on the Instagram. So feel free to send her a note and then discuss what possible solutions are available to you. Not forgetting that if you're in need of a quick getaway in a cozy, fully furnished 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom condo, which is located at the hilltop with a breathtaking view, then be sure to check out Nosonios. There's high-speed internet, modern amenities, and it's perfect for families, perfect for expats, and the list goes on and on, of course. So there's a Facebook page, which is Nosonio. So check it out. And if you have any questions, just send them an email, and I know they will be more than happy to reply to your inquiries. Not forgetting, we also have the best homemade punch creamer, incredibly creamy, smooth, right amount of balance of the perfect balance of rum and sweetness and intense flavor. Our must-try flavors include pistachio, coconut, peanut, and chocolate, of course. And the prices vary, depends on the size of the bottle. Besides that, no party, no get together is complete without R&R's pastiches. Our golden brown, fully loaded pastiches come in different sizes and different fillings. All right. So if you're interested in that, again, send us a message and we'll be happy to cater for your next event. So, family, today we are going to along with my brother Kamukama, we are going to have a discussion about the 2024 China Africa Summit that was recently concluded, right? This represents the 9th forum. And of course, the theme was joining hands to advance modernization and build a high level China Africa community with a shared future. Besides the over 50 something African heads of state that were in attendance, we also took note of the presence of the Secretary General of the United Nations, as well as the Chairman of the African Union, amongst others. The forum is held every 3 years since 2000 and focuses on a number of policy areas, such as industrialization, agriculture, education and training, trade, cooperation, and security. One of the biggest outcomes of the summit is China's pledge of $50 billion to Africa over the next 3 years. However, the question we ask, and the question I'll be putting to my brother Kamukama, is as follows. In the final analysis, who benefits from this particular summit? Brother Kamukama, welcome to another edition of Unity and Solidarity TV, right? It's always a pleasure to have you on our platform to learn, to gain your insights and perspectives, which I have full confidence will allow persons to have a more informed opinion when it comes to this particular topic. Welcome, my brother. Unmute your mic.
Thank you so much for having me on this amazing program. First of all, one of the biggest things that I'm happy from you personally is how you perfectly pronounce my name Kamukama now.
My apologies. My apologies.
No, you paid so much. Nice my name Kamukama. Every time we started at the beginning, it was so hard for you.
Oh, okay.
So
yes,
you tried so much. You tried so much to perfect my pronunciation, and that drives us to the importance of how we, if African people, can keep in touch with each other wherever we are. We get to know each other in terms of tradition, religion, economics, and every other aspect. So if my brother that I've never met from St. Martin's Island can pronounce my name correctly, just the few sessions that we've been doing online, what will happen when we meet physically in terms of economics, in terms of social and political? You see, no one who is going to change our well-being, we as African people, wherever we are. And unless we step up to the change that we are facing and change them directly. So that was my introduction for this show and giving my Thanksgiving remarks to my brother Kaheru from St. Martin's Island.
Yes.
So
Excellent.
in line with today's show, we are talking about China Africa Summit, which happened from 4th September, 6th September, where most of the African leaders rushed to China for a meeting that means the African person, or as the African 1 inch. 1 inch is a Swahili word which means a ground person, a normal living person, a commoner who has lived on the African continent for the last 24 years, and who has seen most of these summits happening, and what has always been promised by our leaders and China, and a person who has also experienced the effects, the outcomes of these summits from ground. So I believe I'm the perfect person to consult on such summit. First of all, China African Summit has been happening since 2000. So we've been seeing African leaders going to China since 2000. So this is not the first of a kind that we've always have experienced these meetings. And the expectations are always high, both from China and from African leaders rushing to Beijing to hope that Beijing can solve the problem of Africa. But I can tell you, since we've been having these meetings from 2000, we've been experiencing similar challenges that have been promised by this summit to be solved. Simply because our African leaders are rushed or they join these meetings because they are aware that they benefit personally, not the interest or the mandate of the people. It's only in Africa where African leaders carry their personal mandates rather than mandates of the people that voted into office, that voted them into office. When you look at Uganda in particular, how Chinese have used such summits to exploit Ugandan resources so much, I can't even tell. We are having so much unbalanced benefits that come as a result of such meetings between African leaders and Chinese people. Because the Chinese know the potential and the capacity of African continent, and they are aware that Africa has the biggest and largest young population that is willing to work at any time, at any cost. Because the Chinese know that Uganda has the resources each and everywhere, I'm giving my explanation from Ugandan perspective. And I've had a chance to travel all over East Africa. I've gone to Kenya, I've been to Rwanda, I've been to the Democratic Republic of Congo. So whatever happens in Uganda, in most of the times, it relatively happens in most of these East African nations. Not only East African nations, but across the African continent. So China knows that it needs Africa for the next survival. Not only China, because last time, this year, we saw the Africa-Italy summit. Also, other summits have been happening. A small country also called Japan is something African is summoning African leaders. The USA has been doing this. Russia has been doing this because they know they need Africa for survival. But one would ask themselves what happens when African leaders meet themselves through our regional bodies. At the beginning of this year, we had a summit in Kampala. Kampala is the Uganda of capital city for our listeners. We had the beginning of IGAD. And IGAD leaders wanted to tackle the political crisis in South Sudan. But Sudanese leaders didn't come. That shows the different internal differences that we have as African people that we don't trust within ourselves. And the Western world, including China, has noted that African people are divided among themselves. So let's call them, use their division, and exploit them. I can tell you, I've had so many chances to talk to Ugandan investors, indigenous people that have raised so much capital to start businesses in Uganda in terms of agriculture, in terms of textile, and other businesses. But they cannot compete with Chinese investors in Uganda. Why? It is out of these summits that the Chinese government uses to pressure our leaders to give Chinese investors in Uganda very many tax holidays. So at the end of the day, it is out of these meetings that Chinese come in Uganda and then they are given so much business holidays. When I talk about business holidays, I mean so many taxes getting relieved of their businesses. They are given free run, they are given tax holidays. But our own investors are not given such. So at the end of the day, our own local investors in Uganda have so much cost of production, which increases cost of goods. And the foreigner comes here in Uganda and then they are given free rent, tax holidays, and the cost of production is low. So benefits is definitely China, not Africa. Why? Because our leaders are given little pickpockets. In Kiswahili you call it jaribu. And Ugandan and our leaders not only do this to Chinese, they do this to Italians, Chinese, Americans, Japanese, and our own people can't even compete with foreigners in our own land. And for how long shall we allow this to happen? Getting exploited in our country. My brother Makeru, you know, the rest of the world needs Africa. But from the actions of we as African people, we portrayed that we don't need Africa. And for how long can we allow this to happen? At the end of the day, we shall be pushed and become aliens in our own land that was gifted to us. So it is this, out of this criticism and out of experiences, that I call upon the African people wherever they are. They can be in St. Martin's, but they have a background in Uganda to come and invest in Uganda. To come invest in Kenya, to come invest in the whole East Africa, to come invest in the whole African continent, rather than allowing foreigners to exploit our resources. And how do we do this? We need to get laws that promote African interests first. When you look at African Union, it's just out of touch with reality. Because our leaders are just corrupted. I'm happy that when you look at what is happening in West Africa, young people from Niger, from Burkina Faso, from Mali, said we cannot allow our countries to be exploited by foreigners, and they have integrated themselves and formed an organization. And very soon I was following up what we are commenting. They were saying we need free passport for the 3 countries. We need free visa. We need free trade within ourselves. All I wish, and I wish you, that all this happens within the 54 African countries. Let me tell you, Mr. Makeru and our listener, whoever they are listening from, there's no one outside Africa that is going to solve African challenges. In fact, many of them are willing to exploit the loopholes that we have within ourselves and benefit the other races. So we need to step up the challenges that we are facing now and look for solutions. And mostly this can be done by young people on the continent. 75% of the population on the African continent is young people, including me. So the moment we young people don't step up the challenges that we are facing, it means the other generations come will blame us for not doing anything to save their continent. So my final take on China African summit that happened this month is it shows the internal weaknesses that we have within the African people. Well, some scholars may say that Africa has invested so much, that China has invested so much in Africa. But when you are to look at the balance of interaction between Africa and China in terms of trade, then such indifferences will tell you, they will tell you directly who's benefiting. Is it Africa or is it China? Facts will tell you. It's not my own perspective or my own of how I'm thinking things. Eh? But they will tell you how China is scooping African resources. Last week, I had a school reunion in one of the schools that I studied, high schools in Western Uganda. Can you imagine Chinese language is being taught in Ugandan schools? How many of our African languages are taught in China? How many are they? Many of our Ugandan talent, in terms of maybe engineers, China is taking them and using them to do more, to improve their technology in China, and these people never come back. China uses them to explore and do many innovations that benefit Chinese people, but they never come back. Why? Because we have so much differences within ourselves that are letting us down as the African people. And we've not realized, we've not tackled this internally within ourselves. Our leaders have failed us. Some leaders forget that they are carrying people's manifesto. So they got China for their own, they signed these deals because they are given jaribu, pickpockets. The only solution would be, I don't definitely advocate Africa not to interact with the rest of the world. This is an open global world now, but I want a balanced interruption. I want a balanced interruption so that we all benefit. But that balanced interruption cannot happen if we African people cannot have a balanced interruption within ourselves in terms of business. Right now, I cannot go to the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is a neighbor to Uganda, if I don't have $100 for border people. But someone from outside Africa would come and then doesn't pay that $100 US dollars. We need to organize ourselves first, because at the end of the day, it's us that suffer the consequences of not interacting within ourselves in terms of business, in terms of economics, in terms of politics. At the end of the day, Chinese language will be taught in Uganda, and there's no any Ugandan language that will be taught in China. And there's no society that can develop without identity. Never. This is modern day colonialism that our leaders are promoting through these summits. And we as African people, I guess there's so much to do. Yeah, that's my take for now.
My brother, you have laid out so many themes in your opening remarks. I don't even know where to start. I really don't know where to start. And at one point, it felt as if you were reading from my notes, or maybe I was reading from your notes when I was preparing for this particular show. But something that you said that really struck a chord with me, and that is with regards to our African leaders, who are being summoned, I love that word, who are being summoned from Italy to Russia to China, and we've noticed this increased interest in Africa ever since, or rather, it has heightened since the COVID-19 global pandemic. We have also noticed it since Russia and America had a fallout over the Ukraine crisis. So, of course, Russia needs resources, money, influence. And of course, there's a growing discontent with the West. So here comes China and Russia using the, let's call it, the diplomacy of memory, because that's something that stood out very strong in the speech of the president of China. They're using the politics of memory to separate themselves from the historical injustices meted out by the West. Besides that, I've also noticed that China is presenting itself as a developing country. Now, anyone can easily say it's semantics and such, but I am still grappling with the idea that China is a developing country, given the size of its economy and its standing in global affairs. But again, that's just based on my lack of information, right? And the way how his speech was framed, I'm talking about the president of China, it was, filled with ideas of solidarity and togetherness and mutual respect, right? And modernization kept on coming out very strong. But at the end of the day, I often wondered to myself, in whose ultimate interest is this? Because let's take, for example, they are talking about they want to boost agriculture in Africa. And they are talking about bringing in persons, to teach and to train.
My
And to
brother, let me cut you short. You were saying that China is willing to invest in Africa in terms of agriculture. So you think China is coming here to invest in agriculture to benefit Africa? Because they are aware that it's fertile soil, it's only Africa where fertile soils are. They are aware that it's only in Africa where we have cheap labor that can be invested in agriculture. It's where they know that it is in Africa where they can get agricultural products for their factories, and then they use agricultural products, bring them to Africa, and sell them at a relatively higher price. By the way, I'm in Africa. I'm telling you from what I'm experiencing personally and what I see. We are not in virtual world. We are in reality right now. I've had so many friends of mine that have been pushed out of business by Chinese. And you're saying that the Chinese president was saying we are doing this for the benefit of Africa. Let me tell you that are people who have seen the potential of Africa and are willing to exploit such potential through propaganda, through such cheap means. But they are doing all this to benefit the African, their nations, not the better of Africa. When you look at the rate at which Africa benefits from China and the rates at which China exports the fake products to Africa, then it's when you know what I'm talking about. And it's not only China, it's Russia. Russia is just using our leaders because they are selling weapons to kill ourselves in African nations. Everyone is using our own disagreement to benefit themselves. And we are speaking such. Me, when I'm telling you, I'm telling you from my own perspective. I've lived in Uganda, I've lived in Africa. So you have first-class information. You don't have from government propagandists. You have it from a story point and from the part of it.
That's right.
So the most important part would be now, how do we organize Africa so that we also start summoning China to Africa?
But
Since
wait,
China
before we
knows
do
what.
that, before we do that, let me read a section of the speech, because I think the speech delivered by the president is very insightful. Okay. And I'm really, if I had really given it more thought, my brother, I would have asked you to read it, even though you've already touched on many of the themes of the speech. But because when I read the speech, I almost fell off my chair in disbelief. Okay. I almost fell off my chair in disbelief. Let me give an example of one of the points, because within his speech, there are like 10 policy imperatives. Let's call it that. There are 10 policy areas that China intends to deepen its cooperation with the African continent. Okay. And let me just read off some of these, just for the interest of our listeners and viewers. Let me just read off some of these, this call it the 10 points that China intends to explore. The first point, the partnership action for mutual learning among civilizations. And then afterwards, I'll try to give, some more information around these particular topics. Second, the partnership action for trade prosperity. Third, the partnership action for industrial chain cooperation. Fourth, the partnership for action for connectivity. Fifth, partnership for action for development cooperation. Sixth, partnership action for health. Seventh, partnership action for agriculture and livelihoods. Eighth, partnership action for people-to-people exchanges. Ninth, partnership action for green development. 10th, and finally, partnership action for common security. Now, my brother, I know you was talking earlier, right, about the agricultural part. Here's what the president says, right, under the point, partnership action for agriculture and livelihoods. China will provide Africa with 1 billion won in emergency food assistance and build 6,670 hectares of standardized agriculture demonstration areas in Africa. China will send 500 agricultural experts to establish a China-Africa Agricultural Science and Technology Innovation Alliance. And it goes on. We will implement 500 programs in Africa to promote community welfare. We will also encourage two-way investment for new business operations by Chinese and African companies enable Africa to retain added value and create at least 1 million jobs for Africa. Your thoughts, my brother?
You see, what they say is not what happens on ground. They say all the good things, but me who's on ground, I know different things that directly affect us. I will not change my statement. China is not in Africa to develop Africa. It is in China to advance Chinese interest. They are willing to do any kind of tricks to divert or to portray themselves as the saviors of African continent. So the speeches are always sounding nice, but the action is always shower. So the only remedy would be we as the African people solving the challenges that we face within ourselves. There's no outsider going to solve the challenges that we face. Even China is doing what it can because they are aware that they need Africa. I've told before, look from population point. Young population. We are the continent that still has free fertile land. We are the only continent that still has good climate and do agriculture without so much investment. We are the only continent that has a large market. The irony is, it's the outsiders that are seeing the potential within Africa. Our African leaders are on a parallel point line with African development. I'm sure if an African nation right now called for an African summit, that summit will not be attended by even less than 30% of the member states. Because we hate each other. From practical point, our leaders have failed us. They are willing to go because they will get pickpockets. Out of all these years you mentioned, I'm sure 50% would go political leaders. The reason why African leaders are going to China does not account for the loans or any financial support they give Africa. They don't care as long as they give you loan and then it gets embezzled by African leaders. No, they won't care. As long as they get around, they do business here, and the benefits of their investments only benefiting political heads, they won't care. And that's why we have so many African China summits getting attended by most of the African leaders. They know that's the deal, that's the way through to benefit themselves. But the other good thing is African young people are beginning to know that these summits do not benefit them. They are rising up and they are saying You got China, you got these other nations, you go to Russia, you go to Italy, you get this money, but you use this money for your own benefits. If you're aware, last month we had demonstrations in Kampala, Uganda, where young people were demonstrating from corruption by parliamentary officials, members of parliament, both within, outside, and inside government. So the revolution, the Gen Z revolution, is happening not only in Uganda but across other African nations. Young people are saying we need to get rid of the corruption and personal interest by our leaders, because they are running from what is happening, from what happened in the 3 West African states. And this is what I'm advocating, because we, the largest population, the young people, are facing challenges that come from out of betrayal by our old leaders in power. It's us that suffer most. It's us that when they go to China and get these loans that have so much interest rates in the long run, it's us that pay it in terms of high taxation. The Chinese constructed a road here in Uganda. It's called Entebbe Expressway. Every time I use it, I pay more than $4.
Wow.
So I have to speak because I'm the culprit of these bad deals. But the most important part would be that it would be much more better if we traded within ourselves.
I agree.
As the African continent, if Uganda could trade within Kenya, if Kenya could trade in Uganda, would be so much better rather than getting exploited by outsiders. Thank you.
Yes, I totally agree. Because with all of these summits, right, to me, it only prolongs the work that we as African people ought to be doing. Because how is it that Italy, Russia, China, Europe, they see so much value in the continent, and you have leaders occupying the seats of power, right? Or not moving with a sense of urgency to strengthen their internal market, right? To try and capture those resources, to try and change the relationship, right? Especially the economic relationship between Africa and others. Because I hear more about BRICS, I hear more about these other summits, and I'm not hearing enough about the quest to achieve Africa's 2063 agenda. I am not hearing enough about how we are going to unify Africa as a single block. It always seems, my brother Kamukama, it always seems ironic to me that one president meets with 54 heads of state. That's ironic to me. You understand? It's very ironic to me. And the question that comes in my mind is, are they discussing on an equal playing field? Yes, you can be president of Uganda, you can be president of Kenya, wherever. But when you are the president of a single economic union, a single political union, surely that carries significant weight and influence also. Instead of having all of these different entities, these different delegations, which in turn uses up so much valuable resources. I can imagine the plane trips and the per diem and all of the other benefits that they get, right? which could have been used productively in society, but that's a different conversation. But I think that sometimes these summits, they've been enough summits. As a matter of fact, the president of South Africa, he complained about the growing deficit between, let's say, South Africa and China. We've also read certain reports that suggest that China was not forthcoming with the loans and benefits it promised in the previous summit. So for those of us who are looking at these things, we ask ourselves, what is the difference now? What is the difference now? Besides China wanting to gain influence on the continent and basically push out American influence and European influence, right? What is a real added value? And at this particular point, my brother, at this particular point, and you said it earlier, and I want to echo those sentiments, it just looks like neo-colonialism, but in a different form. That's what it looks like to me. Okay, because even when we look at the policy area of green development, right? All of these things that China is promising to give to Africa have to come from Africa. That is the irony of it, because the materials and the minerals that they need to produce, let's say, solar energy or to enhance communication or whatever, or to enhance their military, those minerals must come from Africa. So in a sense, what really is Africa gaining from this? Because from what I'm reading, right, and the different sources, it suggests that the relationship will just be the same. Africa will be producing cheap labor, primary raw materials, and in turn they will buy them back with the added value and take on debt. That is the irony of these quote unquote summits. It's ironic that a country like Kenya, right, who we have seen for the past few months, was engulfed in these uprisings and these manifestations led by the younger population because of the budget cuts. But Kenya took on these budget cuts, or considered the budget cuts, because of its ballooning debt to the IMF and World Bank. So you already have this situation where you have a large number of your national income being paid to debt, and here you are going to China and asking for more debt again. As an African in the diaspora, it looks contradictory. It continues to look contradictory, especially when we consider the quest or the question or the pursuit of reparations. Okay, because many African leaders are staunch supporters of reparations, but at the way it is looking, it seems to suggest that if and when reparations is paid, it will be eaten up by debt. And don't get me wrong, I believe debt cancellation is a step towards reparation, but I don't think that each debt should be taken on. I don't think we should be rushing towards debt, mindful of the economic structure of our society, mindful of the challenges our society is currently experiencing. I don't know. I really don't know, my brother. So I do agree with you on so many aspects, and ultimately this should be another wake-up call, not only for Africans on the continent, but also Africans in the diaspora, to find ways to truly mobilize resources and claim our sovereignty. Because at this particular rate, I'm not sure. You know, just recently I saw that there's a number of bank notes, let's say from Egypt and I think Morocco, but there were some countries in Northern Africa. And when you look at the symbols on these bank notes, it has pictures of projects that were financed and constructed by China. I don't know if you got to see that, my brother. If
Yeah, I've
not,
seen.
I'll have to send you the link. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay. So these are some of the things, that would gain the attention of any patient observer, right? Of any patient observer. So despite all of the rhetoric that we see coming from African leaders, right, about development and equality and such, I mean, I thought it was ironic to hear from the president of South Africa about equality. Meanwhile, South Africa remains one of the most unequal countries in the world, where people are demanding basic services like regular water and electricity, basic services like healthcare. Okay,
Yeah,
and he
yeah,
thought it
yeah,
fit.
yeah. Yeah.
Go
You
ahead, my brother.
see, you see, the moment we as African people get divided within ourselves, the more that those who are better organized than us
That's right.
will exploit us. When you see what is happening in South Africa is black people in South Africa are more living like foreigners in their own land, and the moment these other African nations do not run from what is happening in South Africa, the same experiences will come to their nations. In Uganda here, I've already told you that the Chinese have more tax holders than Ugandans,
That's
the
right.
Russians, the Americans, and this is happening across all the African nations. So as I conclude, the more solution would be with the African people to look at the importance of unity, to look for solutions to trade within ourselves, to restore the Ubuntu solidarity,
That's right.
to love each other, to support each other, sort of our challenges within ourselves. If we had an African Union organization that surely serves the interest of the African people, then we wouldn't have political instabilities in Sudan. We wouldn't have political instabilities in Democratic Republic of Congo. We wouldn't have Christian divisions in Cameroon. We wouldn't have political instability in Libya. But we have allowed our enemies to exploit the differences within each other. So the only remedy would be how we can look at solving our own challenges within ourselves rather than rushing to exploiters, because we all know that the African continent has what the rest of the world needs for survival. And to all our Ugandan counterparts, the Ugandan youth that are tuning in, is we need to get more youth get involved in the politics of this country. We have elections in 2026, and the easiest way, of one of the ways of communication, is getting involved in the politics of this country, because politics determines everything, literally. And personally, I'm stepping up to the challenges. I will be the champion of what I'm speaking. So
That's right.
the next time I'm here and I'm asking for finances from Unity&Solidarity TV, know that the time for talking is done. It's now time for
Yes,
action. So
that's right. That's right.
yeah, those are my concluding remarks for now.
All right. All right. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for that. And of course, we want to hear more about your intentions. And I mean, I guess, is this the first place you've announced that you will be contesting the elections, my brother?
Yes, this is the first time platform that
There you
I've
go.
announced my intention. So
Give thanks. Give thanks. Look at that. Look at that. An exclusive, an exclusive with our brother who intends to bring that Pan African voice, to the masses in an elected capacity in the very near future. And of course, we want to have you back because we want to know about your program, your aspirations, and how the people are responding to your desire to represent them in the Honorable Assembly. So look out for that invitation. Of course, we can always discuss ways of support and so forth. My brother, I want to thank you so much for sharing your time with us today, and of course for providing us with your informed analysis. And I know we have only scratched the surface because I really wanted to delve in deeper into the speeches, not only of the president of China, but that of the African leaders. So I am hoping that we can have another meeting, right, where we can bring what they said into perspective and in line, right, and to see if it aligns with the lived realities of our brothers and sisters on the ground. Okay, so let's discuss that after today's podcast so that we can continue to bring great information to our family at home and abroad. So, family, there you have it. Before we sign off, I have to remind you of again, if you are looking for a mindful coach, a yoga instructor, please make it a point to visit Mindful Elevation Caribbean on Facebook, on Instagram, and of course on YouTube, where there's tons of podcasts on different topics. And of course, if you need someone to cater to your next gathering, happy hour, party, consider our tasty, flavorful, creamy punch creamer, and of course, our loaded golden brown pastiches filled to the brim with different fillings such as spinach and cheese, meat, and saltfish. And of course, we are busy exploring different alternative options, of course, so that we can always continue to excite your palate. Brothers and sisters, I want to, I had to mention it at the beginning of the podcast, but I failed to do so, that yesterday, September 21st, 2024, marked the earth strong of one of the greatest Pan-African leaders that the Creator has blessed us with. I speak of none other than the Honorable Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who championed anti-colonialism, who championed the political and economic unification of Africa. And each time I consider the developments in Africa, I always find myself revisiting his speeches, revisiting his legacy to put things into perspective. So I urge and encourage each and everyone under the sound of my voice to go on your favorite website for books and see what titles are available. And if you're anything like me, you'll collect all of his speeches as much as you can. And if you can't buy it, borrow it. And if you can't borrow it, find a way and get it, because there is a wealth of information, there is a wealth of inspiration. And the more we study and digest his information, the more we understand the critical role we must play in fulfilling the mandate that he left for us. Well, that does it here for us at Unity and Solidarity. Once again, it was a pleasure to be with you. And from all of us here, we wish you a blessed Sunday. And we leave you with the prophetic words of the most honorable Right and excellent Marcus Messiah Garvey. Up ye mighty race, you can accomplish what you will. One God, one aim, one destiny.